What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Why do we keep getting recycled events, and what can be done to improve them? A question came up in my Respawn series video yesterday about recycled events and why we keep getting them. Sure, it's easy to complain and dunk on those events for being bad or boring, and I did make another video going over all of the legitimate criticisms with the Storm Rising event. But in this, I want to try something a little different. I want to suggest possible solutions for making events like Storm Rising more interesting and just overall a better event for everyone. Now, the most recent event is that Storm Rising one, and it was pretty disappointing for a lot of people, myself included. And as I've said before, the Archives event is easily my favorite. I look forward to it every year. However, this year, it was just a very lackluster recycled event. The other events suffer from the same problem. I mean, who exactly is looking forward to Lucio Ball for the 4th year in a row? Anybody? I know I'm not. Alright, so let's get a couple of things out of the way. First, Blizzard doesn't have an infinite amount of time. They need to decide how much developer time is spent on new permanent features versus event-specific stuff. I would rather have permanent features than just event things that are only around for a couple of weeks. Also, we have to realize that the main point of these events is so that Blizzard can continue generating interest in the game so that they can ultimately sell more copies to new players and loot boxes to existing players. The main problem, however, is that the existing player base is getting increasingly more and more frustrated with all of these recycled events, and having them be treated as if it's just an opportunity to sell more loot boxes. So let's take a look at Storm Rising and see what things could have been changed. Now, the idea here is not to have any drastically massive things that would have taken months and months and months to make. We're looking at smaller changes that, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but they're smaller changes that could have realistically have been done. We'll start out with the map itself. Retribution and Rialto had the map reversed. The normal starts when you're at the museum and you end up at the Talon headquarters, but during the event in Retribution, you start in the Talon headquarters at Antonio's office, and then you escape through the map, through the museum, and that's how you get out. This is certainly a cool factor, but it's not entirely necessary to have the map reversed all the time. It made sense for the Retribution event, but for Storm Rising, both the normal map and the event map makes more sense if you start at the garage, you go through the city towards the helicopter pad. So it doesn't need to be reversed. The difference, however, between those two maps is that the Retribution event has extra areas that you don't see in a normal map. And this is important because it actually makes the event a longer thing than if you were just running through the normal payload version of it. So in Retribution, you start in Antonio's office, and there's waves of enemies that come at you in a gauntlet. Then at the end of the mission, you go through the museum, which would normally be the spawn room for the attackers, and you go out to the other side to a completely new area on the outside of the building, and you then have to go through another gauntlet, waves and waves of enemies, and waiting until you escape. The reason why the Storm Rising event feels so much shorter is because it doesn't have those extra rooms. It's just using the normal distance of a regular payload map, and Retribution had it extended beyond that normal distance. The first thing I would have done to improve the Storm Rising event and to extend the length of it would have been to have added an extra area or two. Perhaps the strike team could have gone into this building, which appears to be a hotel of some kind. Maybe they could have been told, hey, we saw Maximilian go into the hotel, let's go check that out. And then you go and check it out and he's not there, and then you go through the Don Roberto, warehouse kind of thing, and then you end up going to the castle, so all that sort of stuff. But you start out in the hotel. They could have added an extra couple floors to it. I mean, really, once Blizzard has the outside done, they can just copy and paste that and make extra levels of it. And the inside, they could have kind of done the same thing where a lot of it's copy and paste because they already created all of the elements inside of the hotel that they need to use. Like, they have the design for what the staircase and the floor and the walls and all the little extra kind of things, the decorations, they have all of that stuff already done, right? They could have just added a couple of extra floors and had the players go up through there looking for Maximilian. And when they don't find him, they could have had the entire strike team exit through the top right? Like, hey, why bother going all the way down? You can just jump out the window on the 3rd or the 4th floor, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? There's no fall damage in Overwatch. So everybody just jumps out, then there's another little thing, you go into the warehouse and you continue. So that would have been a way of adding a little bit extra to the event without drastically increasing the massive size of the map. It's just an extra area where you have another thing that happens. Not only that, but having the staircases and multiple floors works really well with the team comp that we got for the Storm Rising event, because Winston, Genji, and Mercy are all really good at that vertical mobility stuff. So you could have easily had multiple enemies showing up on different floors and you go up and down through the staircase. I mean, it could have worked. Moving on, another thing that could have made a big difference in the event and made it feel new would be having new enemies. Now, I realize that you're having to fight Talon, so you're going to have some of the same enemies overlap from previous years. That makes sense, but for Storm Rising, it was the same 5 enemies that we had last year. Even adding one new special enemy, or even a normal enemy, would have picked it up a lot more. The special unit could have been something like an engineer that deploys a couple of turrets, or maybe the normal units could have been medics that heal their teammates, or a spy that sneaks up behind you and is invisible, or a tank unit that could drop a barrier. What I'm saying is that when you have wave after wave after wave of nothing but the same troopers and enforcers again and again, it gets kind of boring. I also want to point out that there seems to be a lot less enemies in this event than there was in the previous event. Retribution also had a lot more enforcers, making the overall difficulty higher, whereas Storm Rising seems to throw a lot more troopers your way, making the event easier. Now, again, I realize that these changes can't be done in a single day, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is there's a difference from outright recycling a previous event versus reusing older elements in order to create a new and improved event that continues the storyline and the progression from last year. So let me throw it to you guys. What sort of things do you think could have been changed in this event that would have improved it without drastically increasing the amount of time needed to make the event itself? Leave your ideas in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.